thing was like, we have women in our lives that we all care about, like that. We have mothers, sisters, wives, girlfriends, and nieces, and some of the things that were going on, like black women's health issues have been coming up, and some of the things like that have been like some of the access to health care and for black females in this country. And so with that, we're gonna have a specialist come on right now. My sister, who I love dearly, and she was checking on me all during COVID time, and I love her dearly. Can our super producer bring in Kelly, please?
Hey,
Kelly. Can we get Kelly unmuted? Can we get Kelly unmuted?
Hey, Kelly.
Hey, what up, sister? How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Kelly, how you doing? Kelly, you ain't trying to fight. You ain't trying to box or nothing, right?
Listen,
Kelly?
I can't fight.
You can't fight.
I can't fight someone in the 5th grade, so I'm with you.
That's right. There you go, Kelly.
Meet me at 3 o'clock.
Kelly, seriously, Kelly, they got some tough kids in 5th grade now. You might think about maybe 3rd grade or 4th grade. Yeah. But I've seen a lot of 5th graders. A lot of 5th graders can get it in now.
As long as you haven't gone through puberty, I think I'll be good.
There you go. I'm with you.
So Kelly, give the people a little bit background on what you do.
Okay, so I'm very blessed to be here. I'm an expert in maternal health and health disparities, the health of Black women, of queer folks, of Latinx folks here in the New York City area and across the nation. I'm the Chief Equity Officer of the National Birth Equity Collaborative, where we really strive to support a world where all Black mamas, pregnancies, and babies thrive.
That's nice.
That's what's
very nice. Now, let me ask you a question, because it sounds like this is not just a vocation, but more like a calling. I always think people in the medical field is something that you've got to love doing, that you have to have a passion for, and it just seems like you do have that. Where did it come from?
I'm very, very blessed to come from a long generation of health providers, health workers. My mother was a neonatal nurse. My grandmother was a neonatal nurse. My father was Mississippi's first Black nephrologist. So I grew up in the dirty South. So, Damon, you and what Chicken Wing was making, you don't want to have to go see my dad. So
I told you, Chicken Wing trying to kill you.
I didn't make it. Chicken Wing made it. He wanted me,
but you ate it.
Good. I had to try it.
Listen, 2021, we're thinking about our health, not just of us, but the people who we love. We're moderating our salt intake. We're getting out moving. That's really the reason why COVID is disproportionately affecting us all. It's because of our poor health status, which is actually not individual. It has to do with the effects of racism on health. So it's nothing wrong with Black people. It's nothing wrong with Latinx people. We're not biologically deficient. There's no gene that makes us different. What's different is that we make less money. We live closer to environmental toxins. We have stressors, exposure to violence that other people don't have, which age us on a cellular level.
That's deep.
So when we get sick, we get extra sick, and we have the kind of jobs that put us on the front line of sickness because we can't go to our house in the Hamptons with our private doctors and hide out.
Wow,
that's right.
That's right. Well, I learned something.
You can't go to Walter Reed either.
I
you can't just walk up and Walter Reed. Yeah.
About kind of like dietary stuff, which is it's no problem. When we're younger, it looks like that we don't understand. I heard a doctor say, what you eat in your 20s and 30s will tell me what I'll be treating you for in your 50s and 60s. And I think early on, you walk into stores, it seems like the healthy food is the most expensive and the least advertised, but Chips Ahoy are 2 bags for $5 and things like that. So some of these things seems like it's not coincidence, that it almost seems like I've understood that there's certain people, like even I think the Heart Association thinks, they will support some of this food and then they'll be against it later on. So it's like, how do people decipher what they should, their eating habits and things like that, that's perpetuated from a young age?
Well, I think we have to talk not about just individual behaviors, but about the system, right? So when we talk about zoning, when we look at how communities are, you have to have a certain kind of license to open a liquor store, just like you have to have a certain kind of license to open a market. So why, if I'm in East New York or Brownsville or, make whatever low income area that has a lot of like Black folks or indigenous people or Latinx people, why do we find certain things like liquor stores and we can't find bookstores and supermarkets? Really, that has to do with like politics and policies and who's making the policies. It's not just about individual choice. It has to do with the environment, how it's structured. And segregation has been really proven. Segregation from like 100 years ago, from after the Civil War, from the Jim Crow South, and also not just the Jim Crow South, but New York City and Chicago are the most segregated cities in the country. So our idea around how racism impacts health has been studied very clearly. And it just doesn't only affect like guys like you, but it really turns out that it affects maternal health. So pregnancies, babies, it's all impacted by structural racism and gender oppression that really control where you eat, what you eat, where you live, and how you can work, which all affects health.
Okay. Kelly, do you think do doctors see Black women different? Like they think we could, like Black women saying we, because I'm half woman. My mother was a woman, so I'm half woman. So do you think that they don't see, like they always think like Black women could take so much pain and do a lot of stuff? Are they treated different? And do you think doctors treat, or is the studies anything, statistics that they treat Black women different than they treat white women?
Racism is such a key part of medicine. For a long time, I looked at my brother's books. He's a surgeon in the South. Folks are taught that Black people can experience more pain. I've talked with white doulas, white birth workers who say, oh, let that person push. Black women, their hips are meant to birth babies. So oftentimes when we're learning through lots of qualitative interviews, through surveying doctors, is that they do have these biased beliefs that they've been taught throughout their medical education that wind up with women not being listened to. And that's really the case when we saw Serena Williams, a woman who is clearly in shape, who is wealthy, had a white husband, almost died having her baby because she knew what was going on with her. She knew that she couldn't breathe. She knew that she had a blood clot. She'd had one before, but they dismissed her. And that happens to a lot of Black women who maybe don't have the same privileges that Serena Williams, does and did. And it winds up with them losing their lives.
So I know they push like a lot of Black women to have C-sections. Why do they do that? They push us all.
C-sections pay hospitals more. That's certainly a piece of it.
Yeah.
They're quicker. Labor takes days. We have overcrowded hospitals, particularly in Black neighborhoods and public hospitals where folks are trying to have empty beds, especially think about COVID time. Beds are at an all-time premium, right? So folks are hoping to have their babies and get out, don't want to be at the hospital, right? So we have to really think through, these are all systemic things. That's why I don't talk about the individual. And certainly at the National Birth Equity Collaborative, what we study and advocate for is changing the system, healthcare systems, changing other kinds of systems, looking at policies across the nations and in states to make sure that it's easier for Black women to have the pregnancies and reproductive lives that they deserve.
Wow. So do you think more Black women should push themselves towards using doulas?
Certainly, if you have the ability to have anyone in your corner, a doula is a person who supports you. They can support you emotionally through labor. They often act as a witness. You'd be surprised how many people give birth alone, right? And we know that during the COVID times, when you're not allowed to sometimes have a visitor, as many visitors as you would normally want, folks really want someone to witness them giving birth. In part, a lot of the Black women that I talk to want to have doulas to kind of guard against the medical racism that many of us have experienced inside of healthcare systems.
Kelly,
Go ahead. All right, go ahead.
No, Kelly, you've seen I'm sure you know a lot of things, especially with African American women. What would you say is a common illness that women, will have, but they neglect it for a long period of time before they get treatment for it?
Well, oftentimes pregnant women, we're the most fierce advocates. I'm sure you know someone who was pregnant and stopped drinking, stopped smoking, right? So pregnant people tend to take really good care of themselves. However, America hasn't always taken great care of us. It's more dangerous for me to give birth today than it was for my mother to give birth to me over 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And part of that has to do with chronic conditions and how healthy we are before pregnancy. So again, Damon, tail chicken wing, we don't need that. We don't need the salt. Hypertension is so closely tied to what we call severe maternal morbidity, especially in New York City, which are life-threatening complications during childbirth. So things like bleeding to death, having really high blood pressure, strokes, all of these things contribute to the fact that in New York City, Black women are 8 times more likely to die of pregnancy-related causes than white women, and across the nation, we're at least 3 times more likely to die than our white counterparts. And that is irrespective of education. So people say like, oh, if we were all rich, if we were all Beyonce, if we were all Serena Williams, we would, this would be a problem. No, this is a problem of racism. I cannot educate myself out of this because a Black woman like me who has a master's degree is still way more likely to die as a result of pregnancy than any other race of woman who dropped out of high school.
Wow.
Wow.
Racism
is everything. Go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say for all the women out there that have any questions for Kelly, please chime in and ask her any question that you want to ask her. That's what she's here for.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here. And mostly I have these conversations with with women or with queer folks. This is the first time I've ever been with 4 men of color. Men have a role to play in maternal health. Just like, I'm tired of white people expecting Black people to end racism. Like, it's not my problem. You created this. This is your problem. It's your moral feeling.
Yeah.
I feel the same way about patriarchy, misogyny, and maternal health, right? So it's not just what happens inside of the hospital. My brothers, we have a horrible issue with homicide and people who are pregnant or have just had a baby. It's a leading cause of death for pregnancy. And it's most of the time our partners, our family members, our loved ones that are killing us. And so I really am very grateful to have this conversation with men here because it's not a conversation that's often being had. Even my educated men in my social circle, they're saying, oh, what is a midwife? What is a doula? Oh, she's pregnant. I'm not thinking about what she's eating, or the doctor would tell her. No, if you have pregnant people in your life, if you have pregnant women, I'm really asking you, requesting of you, petitioning you to check in on your sister, check in on the people in your life that are pregnant or parenting, because they really need your support.
Do you find that there's a lot of people that are pregnant, especially, I guess I would assume younger people, that really don't know what to do, that really don't know what it entails? It's more than just going to term, obviously, to deliver, but there's a lot. I mean, I understand some people don't get prenatal care. How do we start to let the word get out for people to start doing those things? And I think people think there's an economic component to it. That's why some people don't do it.
There certainly is an economic component to it. And that again is a part of structural racism. If I have the kind of job that won't allow me to take time off for paid sick leave, and I have to pick between feeding my family and going to the doctor's office where I have to sit for 4 hours to even be seen, right? So giving up my full days, it's less likely that I'm going to go. If I have to take 3 trains and a bus to get there, it takes me half of a day, I'm less likely to go. So these are all structural things that even folks who have the best of intentions, who really want to birth their children and make sure that their children are healthy and whole or well to the best of their ability, are unable to do in the system that we've set up here in America. So I don't know if necessarily it's a function of age. Certainly, high-risk pregnancies are more common with people who are older, like over the age of 40 and under the age of 20. So on both sides of those, as you get older, things can be more serious, like we talked about earlier. When you're older, hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, all those things play a role in pregnancy outcomes.
So we got a question. Yeah, so we got a question. Someone asking, what can women do to make sure they advocate for themselves when they go to the doctor while pregnant? What can they do to advocate for themselves?
So respectful care is a right. It is a human right. And that's part of what the reproductive justice movement really asserts, that you have the right to respectful care. Some recent analyses have shown that having a provider that looks like you is one way to support like infant health. And so I really ask everyone that make sure that you are comfortable with your provider, that you can share what you need. We often work through kind of whisper campaigns. If you are not comfortable with your provider, if you have someone in your social circle, ask them if they have a provider that is for you. Get everything that you're absolutely entitled to. There are lots of programs now that are cropping up across the tri-state area, across the nation, to provide birth workers like doulas to folks that are low income who desperately need it. So work to see if you're eligible for any of the social supports that your city, state, jurisdiction, your health department near you might ensure that you have access to. Always bringing a friend, and then making sure that you're in the healthiest environment that you can before you're pregnant, during pregnancy, and after. There are lots of things to look out for, right? So if you find that you can't see, that you have blurry vision, if you have wounds that are opening back up, if you have very high fevers, these are life and death issues. So when you have someone in your life, fellas, that's complaining of a headache, that actually could be a sign of a stroke. But oftentimes, like, oh, she's tired. She just had a baby. She needs to lay down. No, that person needs to get to the hospital, and we cannot take no for an answer. If not, it can have a real life or death consequence.
We all have, we're men of a certain age, and we have lives. I'm sorry. What can we do with regard to our women? I said, they transition from birth, ability to have a birth, and kind of transition into menopause years. You know what I mean? How can we kind of help with that, and with their health and whatnot?
Well, one of the things you can is to help ensure that everybody in your life that is reaching that over 40 age is to have the proper screenings, including mammograms. So breast cancer, even though we have a lot of screening in the Black community, there's been a lot of work to get everyone screened for breast cancer. Black women are far more likely to die of breast cancer than white women for a variety of reasons. When we get our breast cancer diagnosis, it's often more further advanced than white women who find out that they have breast cancer. So I would say start off with everything that we know we need to do, including mammography, so mammograms, and colorectal screening. So we think about Chadwick Boseman. I know you guys think about it. That was really a challenge. And I have a cousin who also died of colon cancer at the age of 35. These things are not unheard of in our community, and we have to make sure. Women tend to put everybody else before us. That's what we're socialized to do. It's the kids, it's my partner. I got to take care of the people who are younger than me, and I got to take care of the people who are older than me. And so oftentimes we fall through the cracks, and that shows up in maternal health, that shows up in breast cancer, that shows up in ovarian cancer, that shows up in heart disease. And so if you have folks in your life, really encourage them, see what you can do to take that time off, clear that to-do list for her. Make sure that she knows that she has your support and taking care of her, because where would you be without her?
Absolutely.
Very true.
Do you know midwives or any midwives? Do you know any companies? I mean, midwives that take insurance, because that's the main thing. A lot of stuff we want to do with doulas and midwives and stuff like that. And some things are cash. They're cash. Like, are the insurance companies taking any kind of policy coming down the pipeline that will start recognizing people want doulas and midwives with these insurance companies?
Well, the four of you are pretty lucky because you live in New York City, and New York City has hospitals, public hospitals that have integrated midwifery services. So if you can be on Medicaid, you can be uninsured and have access to a doula at most of our public hospitals, or a few of our public hospitals in New York City. But we have a broken system, right? And so keeping our next president accountable to ensuring better policies and healthcare for everybody. Okay, everybody is going to be a key function, because health is a human right. Paying to have health care, health coverage is something that's extremely challenging. I have a hard time finding Black providers, Black female providers, queer providers. All of these things in our system are very hard to procure. But in some cities, the government has been working to make them more accessible, but there's no place that has a amazing place or a hospital system or a hospital infrastructure for Black women to give birth. But we're working to change that every day.
We're happy that we have sisters like yourself that's on the front lines ready to make that change for us.
Thank you.
She's a Southern girl, so they say they Southern girls got that country strong on them, so you know.
Is there a place, Kelly, that people can go and get all this information?
Yes. So the National Birth Equity Collaborative, you can, if you're here on YouTube, you can see it on my screen. It's at Birth Equity. So that's BIRTHEQUITY. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram. We have all the research, toolkits, and networks to help you have the pregnancy, reproductive life, and sex life that you want and deserve.
All right.
Excellent.
That's what's up.
I have to go get my Viagra right now.
Yeah. No. Don't get no Viagra.
Kelly, listen, sister, so thankful that you came on tonight to educate the folks, to educate myself and the brothers here. We truly appreciate sisters like yourself that's on the front line, that's advocating for our sisters, our queens that we truly need to survive. Us as a nation, we will nowhere without Black women. So we love you. We love you dearly, sister. Appreciate you, sister.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great night.
Have a good night. All right.